you ever heard people use the word they? They don't want us to know that. They are watching us. This is exactly what they want. They have it all planned out. Sometimes people also say the powers that be. Who are these people? Have you stopped to think about who they are referring to? Well, I have one possible answer. I do have to warn you, however, that while researching this topic and diving into this, I actually got scared.
I'm scared to death. I'm frightened and I don't know what to do.
I read things I didn't expect to read. It's almost like walking into a room of a house and seeing something you weren't meant to see.
And then I saw sexual acts that I walked in on.
Who'd you walk in on?
Him and Dwayne Martin.
Yep, exactly like that. Because of everything that I read and came across, I will only refer to the topic at hand as VBN. Got it? Let's get started. The term refers to a group of noble families in Venice who have a long and influential history. The word black is not referring to racial identity in this context, but is instead referring to the dark deeds and mystery that shrouds these people. Or, in another word, the VVN will make sure to not just wield power, but to hold on to it as well. It will not be given up easily. The VVN was organized in a rigid hierarchy, which was documented in the Libro de Oro, a registry created in 1315 that listed the noble families of Venice. The Black Nobility were powerful families from Venice and Genoa, Italy. By the 12th century, they controlled all maritime trade through monopolies. Their influence began to rise during the first of the three crusades between 1063 and 1123, establishing the Venetian Black Nobility and reinforcing the power of the wealthy elite. In 1171, they gained complete control over Venice when the selection of the Doge, the chief magistrate, was handed over to the Great Council, which was made up of the commercial aristocracy, including the well-known Medici family. Since then, Venice has been under their control. The reach of the Venetian Black Nobility stretches well beyond its borders and is felt worldwide. Our modern banking system also started in Italy. In 1204, these oligarchic families distributed feudal territories amongst themselves, marking the beginning of their consolidated power and influence until the government turned into an exclusive club. Who are these families today? Here is a list of just some of them. The House of Windsor, who you know as the British royal family, descends from the House of Guelph. Today, the Guelphs exert their influence by controlling the markets for raw materials, including setting the prices of gold for many years. They also manage the prices of copper, zinc, lead, and tin. These noble families are often the driving forces behind numerous global environmental movements, which indirectly and secretly aim to control population growth. Both Prince Philip and Prince Charles have been prominent figures in these movements. The Black Nobility founded the Committee of 300, a secretive group that is connected to the Illuminati and other similar organizations. Groups like the Club of Rome, the Council of Foreign Relations, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Bilderbergs, and the Round Table all trace their origins back to the Committee of 300, and thus to the Black Nobility family. In his revelatory book, The Club of Rome, Dr. Coleman unveils the British East India Company's transformation into the Committee of 300, the world's most influential and controlling body. The Venetian oligarchy ruled over the Mediterranean. They forced India and China off their gold standard, instead using European silver. Venetians kept their empire by deceiving foolish rulers into war, financing both sides. Quote, the old Venetians never wanted to conquer territory for their empire, except when indispensable to maintain trade monopolies. Territory didn't interest the Venetians. The idea of expanding borders is a stupid Anglo-Saxon concept picked up by the Russians. Venice propagated its system through its bureaucracy in the nationalities it conquered. End quote. Venice Patrician Count Foscari. These royal families do not tolerate a state that does not submit to a financial oligarchy. These are some examples of failed states that did not bend the knee. In John Coleman's book, The Conspirator's Hierarchy, he writes, all of the great historical events are planned in secret by men in high places, with intent to deceive. By the early 13th century, Venice had become a major power through trade and military expansion. Under the leadership of an aristocratic class, the Italian city-state became immensely wealthy and dominant. I will now read you some of the scary predictions from John Coleman's book, Conspirator's Hierarchy, the story of the Committee of 300. Keep in mind that this book was published in 1992. 4 billion useless eaters to be culled by 2050. They will be eliminated by means of limited wars, organized epidemics of fatal, rapid-acting diseases, starvation. The population of Canada, Western Europe, and the United States will be decimated more rapidly than on other continents until the world's population reaches a manageable level of 1 billion, of which 500 million consist of Chinese and Japanese races. Marriage shall be outlawed, and there shall be no family life as we know it. Children will be removed from their parents at an early age and brought up by wards as state property. There will be no middle class, only rulers and servants. Those who are obedient and subservient to the one world government will be rewarded with means to live, while the rebellious will be starved to death, or made a target for anyone who wishes to kill them. Privately owned firearms or weapons will be prohibited. Only one religion will exist in the form of a one world government church. National pride and racial identity shall be stamped out, and to mention one's racial origin will result in the severest penalties.
I only see one right.
The use of recreational drugs shall be compulsory. Each individual shall be indoctrinated to understand that he or she is totally dependent upon the state for survival. From time to time, there shall be artificially contrived food and water shortages and medical care to remind the masses that their very existence depends on the goodwill of the Committee of 300. Regular brainwashing control measures shall be passed off as entertainment in the manner in which it was practiced and became a fine art in the United States. Dr. John Coleman came to the US in 1969. As time went on, he started getting attacked for his work, receiving harassment and threats. He was called a liar, and there were those that spread disinformation about him. In his book, The Conspirator's Hierarchy, he mentioned something called future shocks. Future shocks is described as a series of events which come so fast that the human brain cannot absorb the information. The Science Policy Research Unit at Tavistock's Sussex University defines future shocks as physical and psychological distress arising from the excess load on the decision-making mechanism of the human mind.
But our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us.
In the infamous 1928 book Propaganda by Edward Bernays, he states, "We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. Whatever attitude one chooses to take toward this condition, it remains a fact that in almost every act of our daily lives, Whether in the sphere of politics or business, our social conduct, or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by a relatively small number of persons, a trifling fraction, over 120 million, who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind and who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world. Some people are worried that if the number of people in the world keeps growing too fast, we won't have enough resources like water and food for everyone. They think this could lead to more poverty, hunger, and even fighting over what little is left. They're also concerned that more people means more harm to animal habitats and the environment. The term Black Nobility means more than just noble families supporting the Pope. It goes back way before ancient Rome, to the times of old empires like Babylon, Persia, Greece, Tyre, and Phoenicia. These families were powerful and controlled the trade across the seas. What made the families of Venice, known as the oligarchical families, different is that after the Roman Empire fell apart and split into different areas, these families didn't just follow the old ways, where one ruler and a group of advisors had control. Instead, they took over and ran their areas completely, setting their own rules and enjoying special trading rights. Up until 1172, control and rule of the Republic of Venice was through the appointment of a chief magistrate. This is similar to what is called a mayor today. However, after 1172, the election of the Doge was entrusted to a committee of 40 from the most powerful families of the Republic, who were chosen by 4 men selected from the Great Council of Venice. This committee of 40 were all from the commercial aristocracy of Venice, powerful families with significant economic influence. During most of the past 2,500 years, oligarchs have been identified by their support for the philosophical writings of Aristotle. Aristotle asserted that slavery is a necessary institution because some are born to rule and others to be ruled.
Such a person would be a natural slave, Aristotle claims, meaning that they would inherently lack the capacity to rationally direct their own lives.
I'm sure there are people in politics today that view us like this.
Aristotle argues that owning such people would be just.
We have been convinced that we are free. A pillar of the Venetian oligarchical system was the family fortune, or fondo as it is called in Italian. This referred to the continuity of a family fortune which earned money through slavery, usury, and looting. When the Venetian oligarchy transferred many of its families and assets to Northern Europe, the Venetian fondi provided the nucleus for the emergence of the Great Bank of Amsterdam, which dominated Europe during the 17th century, and of the Bank of England, which became the leading bank of the 18th century. Now on to more contemporary families. The DuPont family. President Thomas Jefferson was a very close friend of Pierre Samuel DuPont. At Jefferson's request, DuPont immigrated to North America with his family in 1799 to start on a plan for national education in the country. Jefferson eventually had him manufacture gunpowder for the United States. To this day, the American Army buys its munitions for all its wars from the DuPonts. Everything that has to do with chemistry is produced by DuPont, with Americans using a DuPont product almost daily. Some examples of their products include Teflon, Kevlar, and Nomex. The Onassis family. Thanks to the Achnacary Agreement, also known as the As-Is Agreement, that was signed in 1928, the extraction of oil and oil trade became one large international monopoly. Aristotle Onassis was a shipping magnate who built the largest oil tankers in the world and amassed the world's largest privately owned shipping fleet. This is the same Aristotle Onassis that went on to marry Jacqueline Kennedy after she became a widow, and the same Aristotle Onassis who said, quote, "After a certain point, money is meaningless. It ceases to be the goal. The game is what counts." The Russell family. They played a leading role in the opium trade at the beginning of the 18th century. In 1823, Samuel Russell led the largest opium cartel in the world. The company Sturgis & Co. in China was part of the Russell Opium Syndicate. The Warburg family. Warburg & Company was a bank founded in 1798. By 1814, the bank had business relations with the Rothschilds in London. They became well connected and started marrying into all the other ruling elite families, getting into top positions of finance in world governments. It was James P. Warburg that stated, "We shall have a world government whether or not we like it. The question is only whether world government will be achieved by consent or by conquest." Let's discuss another book that Dr. John Coleman has referenced in his works. Dope Inc. by the Executive Intelligence Review, published in 1975.
What correlates with opioid abuse? Well, it's not whether you're white, Hispanic, or black. That's all about the same. It's not if you're in high school, college, or not.
Okay, so it's neither ethnicity nor education level.
It is whether you have a job or not. It's the economy, stupid.
Big indicator. Big indicator. I know I've been unemployed multiple times in my life. It sucks.
The fact that you have no job, no future, you have nothing to look forward to, you cannot provide for your family, and the only way out, people are led to believe, is by abusing opioids.
Don't tell me you don't know someone like this. No job, no future, and nothing to look forward to. Many of us do. And many of us also know multiple people like this, unfortunately.
Medical marijuana. It is another complete myth that marijuana is medicine.
Dropping bombs.
We only choose something to be medicine in the United States if it goes through the FDA approval process. We're all familiar with that because of COVID.
Did you know this about supposed medical marijuana?
Anything that has not gone through that process that is used to treat human disease is not legally a medicine.
There it is.
I consider it to be medical malpractice to give marijuana to anybody for any illness.
So how does this relate to all that we are discussing today? How does this relate to you?
I don't know anyone who went to prison for any real time for smoking a joint. These were dealers, these were criminals, some were killers. Those are the people that are in jail, not for smoking a joint.
Goes against the narrative, huh?
So they put out this lie, and so many people in my community bought it, about we're going to let people out.
What other things have Americans in general accepted as true? The Rothschilds accumulated its vast wealth issuing war bonds to black nobility for centuries, including the British Windsors, the French Bourbons, the German Bonthum and Taxis, the Italian Savoys, and the Austrian and Spanish Habsburgs. Dean Henderson, in his book Big Oil and Their Bankers in the Persian Gulf. What today is called the Bilderberg Group, 500 years ago was called the Venetian Black Nobility. The idea behind the European dynastic oligarchy hasn't changed. It's the wholesale destruction of anything related and affiliated with the idea of a nation state. Daniel Estulin, in his book The Bilderberg Group, an offshoot of the Venetian Black Nobility. When I first wrote down VBN on my list of YouTube video ideas, I had no idea all the things that I would discover during my many hours of research. The things I read, oh my god, I had no clue. Every new thing would point somewhere else, and it was all interconnected. Good lord. There was so much I left out just because I didn't want the video to be over 3 hours long. I encourage you to do your own research, and with things being more and more censored and restricted by the day, please read and get informed now before certain articles, videos, and documents disappear from the internet. How do you even end a video of a topic like this? Well, let me share with you a couple of my favorite Bible verses that can resonate during troubling times. Ephesians 6:11. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. Ephesians 6:12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Ephesians 6:13. Therefore put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. And perhaps this quote by the Persian poet Rumi as well. If everything around you seems dark, look again. You may be the light.